Welcome to the Poker Strategy Introduction to HM2 webinar.
The first thing I want to talk about is you can go ahead and ask some questions in the chat, in the Q&A, and I will try to answer those as I go through the webinar. And then if I don't get to those questions, feel free to post in the Poker Strategy forums. We have some tech support reps over there that can assist, and then Poker Strategy is also helping out with that a little bit as well. In the thread over on Poker Strategy, there's a few videos. You've probably seen them, but I just wanted to point it out again that those are there. And then here on the Home tab, we have Holdem Manager TV. And this is a great way to learn about some of the common features used in HM2. And then you'll also notice on this Home tab, there's this HM2 coaching video widget. And this is a very valuable resource of videos so that you can understand and learn techniques from different people, because everyone, plays poker differently and everyone analyzes their game differently. So, getting all that information together will give you great golden nuggets of information about analyzing your game. You can also use a light theme with Holdem Manager too. Right now we're in the dark theme, and I'm going to use that for this presentation. But over here in settings, down here at the bottom of the general settings, you can change your theme to the default, which is a little bit lighter than this dark theme. Okay, so let's go over the basics of Holdem Manager and how it works. Databases, hand importing, HUDs, stuff like that. So the first thing is Database Manager. You can get to it here, but it's also always down here in the bottom right, no matter where you're at. When you click on it, you can see I just have a single database here, but all your databases will be listed over on the left, and you can import databases from Poker Strategy, Holdem Manager, Poker Tracker, and again, I don't have any other databases except my Holdem Manager 2 database here. And then HM Sync is also here. This is more of an advanced thing, but HM Sync is pretty cool because you can back up your database on the cloud, and then you can also share it between two PCs. Hold on a second. Someone's asking a question about no audio. Let me just type a quick reply here. Okay, so where were we? Okay, the Database Manager. Sorry about that. So again, this is where you're going to create databases if you want multiple databases, where you can delete databases and stuff like that. You can also back up your Holdem Manager locally along with your database and configuration files. Now, the next big thing is hand importing. Now, the cool thing about Holdem Manager is it has a tab-based system. You can see this options and heads-up display. As I go through all of the different tabs inside of Holdem Manager, they're always there. And the reason for that is because these are common settings that you're going to use. So anytime that you're looking for an obscure setting or something that you think is in a settings menu, it's always going to be found in these two options on the ribbon, generally anyways. And the heads-up display and options is in these 4 tabs. It's not in the HM Apps tab, but it is in these other 4 tabs. Okay, hand importing. You may have some saved hands. You might have some, hands that a friend sent you, or hands that aren't coming from the poker site. And inside this hand importing option, which again is in all 4 tabs, you can import a single file, you can import from a folder, and then the other big thing is the auto import folders. Now these are generally automatically set up, and auto import folders, your poker site saves a hand history to your hard drive, and then Holdem Manager picks that up and gives you the data. And this is where this is set up. And again, generally this is done automatically, but if you've installed your PokerStars or merge client and in a different location than default, you may have to add in the auto import folder here. And you can also click this auto detect button, and if there are hands inside of these folders, this auto detect will automatically pick it up. And if you notice here, both of these are saying archive to C:\HM2 archive. So every single hand that you play is going to be archived to where you can back it up on an external hard drive. And we briefly talked about sync earlier, so that is another way to back up your hand. So there's all sorts of ways that your database and your data is backed up with Holdem Manager 2. And then the site time adjustments is for when the poker site time is different than your time. The hand time inside the hand history might be different than your local time on your computer, and here's where you can go ahead and adjust that. So that covers the hand importing stuff. Let me look at my notes here real quick. Okay, HUD options, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And again, this is in the heads-up display section here that's always on these 4 tabs inside of here. And then changing the hero, that's another big thing that you might do. When you first import hands, Holdem Manager will automatically select a hero. But let's say you play on multiple sites. You might want to change that to your merge skin or your PokerStar skin. And you can do that by clicking up here and clicking Select Player. But you can also do it down in the bottom right, next to the Database Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and you can start typing in your name, and it'll auto-fill in for you. Now the next thing I want to talk about is an alias. So we've talked about a single hero that Holdem Manager is using, but let's say you wanted to combine all of those heroes into a single alias. Go down here to the change player, or up here in the ribbon. We'll do it up here in the ribbon this time, and we'll click edit aliases. And then I'm going to click this green plus sign, and I'm just going to call this my alias. I'm going to click OK. So that's my alias name. Now we need to remember that, because that's going to be the hero that we add here in a second. So I'm going to add a couple of my hero names here to this alias. I think I played some merge hands the other day. So I have two of my my players inside of this alias, and now when I close this and I change the target player to that my alias, you can see that it has my cash and turning hands here, and now Holdem Manager is going to use this my alias player alias for all the reports, active sessions, and opponent tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to my old alias where I got a lot of hands. Let's see. So we're about to get away from the home tab. There's news widgets here. We talked about HMTV, the coaching videos. There's all sorts of other widgets that you can add by clicking this Add Widget button. And then one other thing are the help icons inside of Holdem Manager. These update as you click things throughout Holdem Manager. I'm going to go ahead and click this blue question mark in the top right. You can see I get a bunch of questions. And as I navigate through Holdem Manager, you can see that these questions change as I click different sections inside of Holdem Manager 2. And the option screens, there's HUD options, settings, and hand importing. These are the main option screens. But all of these also have blue question marks that will take you to HM2 facts. So it's another quick way to get some extra information if you're a little unsure on something. Okay, so we're in the report tab here. First thing I want to do is show you how to add a report. I'm going I'm going to go ahead and delete this position report. I'm going to go ahead and add it back in, and I do that by clicking the More Reports button. There's 20 to 30 reports here for you to use. Some of them are new from Holdem Manager 1. Others are carryovers from Holdem Manager 1. But all you got to do is just go down here and click it. And you can see that it added it up here to the top of the report. Next thing I want to do is show you how to add stats to these reports. So one thing I always like looking at, and this is it's pretty controversial, which is EV. You know, everyone looks at it differently and questions it. I do like using it myself. So let's go ahead and add that. To do that, I'm just going to click this stats button over here on the left. And you can find it here in the categories, and as you click the categories, you can see the stats on the right update. I'm going to actually just search for it. I'm going to say go to the all. I'm just going to type in EV, and you can see it brought the one that I want to the top of the list. And I'm going to click the orange arrow to bring it over here to the left. And we can move it up and down here, but I'm actually going to just say OK. And it adds it over here to the right. Now I'm just going to drag it over where I want it. I like it being next to the numbers here, next to my net 1 figures. And, you know, as you can see, you know, in the small blind, you know, I've only lost 5 big blinds, which is fairly impressive, you know, over 23,000 hands, and I should have lost less, which is even more impressive. You know, my net 1 is $600, and my EV adjusted says I should only be down $379. So my small blind play is fairly decent. I believe average, if you're playing 6 max, you're losing 10 big blinds per 100 hands in the small blind. You're doing okay. And if you're losing 20 big blinds in the big blind, you're doing pretty good. So there's a couple of stats that you can use if you're not all that familiar with stats. Okay, one other thing, well, we have a lot more things to talk about with the report tab, but the next thing, you notice there's lines up here, and as I select different lines, the report or the hand view updates down in the bottom. So if I go down to the button, which is 18,090 hands, it updates this hand view. Now it's only showing the last 250 hands. You can choose to show the last 1,000 or all. I'm going to go ahead and choose all here just to kind of show you how fast it updates. And it's already updated here. So, you know, this is a huge performance improvement for HM2. Let's just go ahead and do this on my overall report, which has over 110,000 hands. I'm going to click all here, and, you know, it'll take a few seconds to show all the hands down there. But you can see, you know, it was less than 5 seconds, and it's showing over 110,000 hands, which is fairly impressive. Holdem Manager 1, you know, it'd be hanging out there for a good 30 seconds to a minute. Let's go back to the position report. This is one of my favorite reports, by the way. Okay, the next thing we're actually going to talk about is graphing, and there's lots of graphing options in Holdem Manager 2. The first one is the cash results graph. Let me go ahead and click that over here. And it's going to update. And again, you know, I have 110,000 hands, so that's quite a bit of data. This is the main graph. Down here in the bottom left, you have options. You can display this in big bets, big blinds. You can display the x-axis as hands, days, or months. You can show your rake back, your EV, points of interest, stuff like that down here. And one other cool thing about this graph is you can slice it and drill down deeper. So if I just drag a little slice here, it zooms in on the graph, and then you can click the graphed hands, and then sort by your biggest, losses here to see, where you lost some money. So, the zoom in option was inside of Holdem Manager 1, but I just wanted to show it to you here as well. So let's go to a different report and show you some of the other graphing options. Let's go ahead and show you the whole card heat map here. This is showing, all the hands for my button play and, whether I've won or lost money. You can see some of these, ace X offsuit hands. I'm losing a good chunk of change here, so that's probably something I want to look at. And then you can also change it by hand count as well. It's saying here, when I've had the button, I've, got aces, a good chunk of time. So that's definitely good news. Let's actually look at this one more for the big blind. But yeah, here's my ace X's, again, and then also some of these suited ace hands as well. So that's probably, some problem hands that I need to dig deeper into. The next thing that you can do is any line in the report, you can graph it. You remember the cash results graph that I recently showed you just a minute ago? If you click this graph here, it'll show you a mini view of the line that you're actually looking at. So let's go ahead and look at my small blind one here. And it's fairly standard. I'm not losing as much as I should be there. Again, 10 BBs is about 4-6 max. But one thing that I haven't gone into is filtering. So this is showing all of my heads-up games. This is showing all my 6 max. This is showing my Omaha and Holdem. So I'm going to show you how to filter for this stuff in a minute, but that's just something to take into account when you're looking at a report as an overall report. Okay, the last graphing option in the reports is you can graph like 95% of the reports by clicking this graph button over on the far right. So when I do that, it defaults to this line report. I'm going to change it to a bar report. And it's showing, my big blinds by position, how much I've won or lost. The other cool thing about this is that it will mix and match. You can actually add multiple stats to it. So here we have a VPIP, and then I just added my PFR next to it. And you can see when I'm in early position, I'm basically raising. I'm not limping. Obviously I have limped a few times there. And as I get to the big blind, I complete it, which is again somewhat standard. The other, again, you can look at this as a pie chart and other types of charts as well as stacked bar. So this is pretty cool. Once you start filtering and understanding how to use Holdem Manager, you can use these graphs to your advantage because you can visually see the data rather than looking at numbers. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is marking hands. You might have noticed I had the show marked hands checked when I was in my overall report. But to mark a hand, all you need to do is highlight a hand, right-click it, and then select the mark option. You can see there's 4 predetermined or preset marks for your hands here. You can also add a new tag, so you can create your custom one. Let's just go ahead and do that. We'll create it French review, we'll call it. And you can, let's add a color to it too, is green. So I'm going to say OK there. You can see it added it here. And now when I right-click a hand and click the mark, boom, we can mark it as a Brent's review hand. So I'm going to go ahead and actually do that right now. So I just marked this hand. And one reason why you're going to want to mark a hand is for, reviews and stuff. You know, you'll have an interesting spot and you want to mark it and save it for later. And then when you click the show marked hands, you can see that it added this Omaha hand here to the actual marked hands that it's displaying. You can also filter for the hands that you have marked. So that, you know, the marking, tagging hands got a pretty huge upgrade with Holdem Manager 2, and so did note taking. And that's where I'm going next. If you want to take notes on a hand, you can right-click it and then view. This will bring up a hand history window. Now, this is the same window that's displayed on live tables. When you're playing live, I'm not playing live now, but when you're playing live, you can click one of the last 3 hands on your HUD to bring this up. And you can take player notes here, and you can also take hand notes here as well. And the hand notes are broken down into general, pre-flop, flop, turn, and river. And then, of course, you can also tag your hand here as well. Now, there's also note caddy notes. I'm going to talk about these a little bit later, but if you don't know anything about note caddy is extremely powerful. It's a new tool developed by a Holdem Manager partner, and the feedback we've gotten is crazy. I haven't used it all that much because I don't grind as much. Well, I don't grind at all these days now that I'm working. But the feedback is hugely immense. And Note Caddy comes with, I believe, 5 or 7 notes. And then once you actually upgrade, it'll come with 100 plus predefined notes. And the cool thing about Note Caddy is that you can customize all these notes. So this is, you know, Note Caddy for me. I'm going to click the spark graphs here, and let's look at one here, or look at a few. So the isolates limper pre-flop. You know, here I'm doing it when I'm strong. You know, some better players are definitely going to be doing it when they're weak. But, you know, I mean, that's some really interesting information that you're getting here that there's no way that you could get with stats. So, you know, Note Caddy is way more powerful than a custom stat creator and stuff, and I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you're just using the free version, it's going to help you immensely. And again, there was an hour and 15-minute Note Caddy webinar that was that was done a couple weeks ago. We have that on our YouTube channel. Check it out for sure. You know, it's definitely going to help your win rate. Okay, so that's the basics of the reports. I suppose one thing I didn't talk about was switching between the two. If you play tournaments, just click this tournament button, and then you'll have all the tournament reports available at your fingertips. All right, so let's talk about some filters now. And, you know, filters, sometimes people are intimidated by filters because they're fairly deep. So hopefully today I'm going to break that down for you so that you're not as intimidated with the filters, because the power of Holdem Manager really does lie in its filters. So we're on the main report tab here, and we're on my favorite position report, and then there's all these buttons up here. The first two I want to talk about is the date range and then the game type. This date range filter is actually fairly solid. It's not just dates, but you can customize this yesterday. Or not yesterday, you can customize it for like your last X amount of hands, you know, last 5 months type of thing. But, you know, you also have quick filters here. And then as you make these filters, they're going to show up down here. So this last 1,000 hands filter is actually a filter I made the other day when I was preparing for this webinar. Let me go ahead and click the custom button here. You can see we could do day, the exact day. We could do before a date, after a date. We could do between a date, and then again the last, 1,000 hands, hours, days, months. So let's just do my last 1,000 hands here, and we can see I won $31 right on. So again, you can change that to 10,000 hands, whatever you like. I'm going to go ahead and clear the filter now, and I'm going to add a game type filter. I just want to show my Holdem hands right now. So, I clicked all Holdem here. Now, one thing you've probably noticed now, whenever I make a filter, there's this orange bar at the top. And this orange bar will display exactly what you're filtering for. So for this filter, it's all Holdem hands. You can mix and match these filters however you see fit. And the other cool thing is that you can apply this filter or any filter that you make to all your reports. So if I click this Apply to All button now, that is, it's saying applying position cache filters to all reports in the bottom left here. So when I go over to the overall, you can see that it applied my only Holdem, all Holdem hands to the overall report. And it works the same way. Let's say, you have a bunch of filters set up on different reports. If you clear your filter to where your report has no filter in it, and then click Apply to All Reports, this will remove all the filters from your other reports. So when I go back to position now, you can see that it removed the filter. Now, that doesn't work just for the date range and game type, but it also works for the more filters. And this more filters is where the filters get really deep. They get really juicy, and it's good stuff in here. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these more filters. This page, or the more filters, got a bit of a revamp. There's some new filters, there's some new functionality, and it's not 100% new, but there's quite a bit of new stuff here. And the cool thing about this are these quick filters that we've set up. So let me add this 3-bet light in position filter. I'm going to highlight it here, and then I'm going to click the green plus sign here. You can see that it added it up here. So it says combo actions 3-bet, 3-betters in position true, and then it's showing the whole cards that we want. So this is a 3-bet light in position, so I'm assuming there's no aces, kings, queens type of hands here. And the other really cool thing about the quick filters, and this is great if you're brand new to these filters, is that you can see how they're made. So check this out. Combo actions 3-bet. Right here, we got 3-bet yes. 3-better is in position is true. That is also in here. That might be over in the, it's over here in the advanced filters. Whew, got scared there. I forgot where it was at. But you can see it added it down here. And then the Holdem hole cards, is obviously going to be on the whole cards Holdem screen. And you can see 9s through aces, all the premium hands are gone. So theoretically, this is a 3-bet light in position. I think everyone would agree with that. And again, the big point I want to drive home about this is that with these quick filters, you can learn how these more complex filters are made. So definitely use them, check them out. Let's go ahead and I'll just say okay, and let's see how I'm doing here. Well, not too good. So anyways, let's go ahead and clear this filter out. And I'm going to go ahead and add my all Holdem filter back in. Let's go back into the more filters here. This front page, you got stakes up here, position and action, and then the basic filters, these are the most common filters that we feel that we feel that players use the most. And instead of going over to the advanced filters, and by the way, these advanced filters are amazing. They're awesome. There's tons of stuff in there for you to filter for. A couple of the new filters is the filter by bet size. You can filter by a pre-flop 3-bet size, stuff like that, your open raise size. So, the filters get very detail-oriented, and the one thing you want to be careful about when making filters is don't make a super specific filter, because you're only going to return a few hands. And if you only have a few hands for a specific situation, your data is not going to be all that accurate. Let's see. Let's go ahead and clear the filters here so that I get my Omaha filters, or the Omaha whole cards filters. Probably only 10% you play Omaha, but I'm just going to hit this real quick. The Omaha card filter was revamped for HM2, so you can pretty much filter for any type of Omaha hand that you have. Wraps, 2-card, 3-card wraps, 4-card wraps. Same thing with Broadways, suited cards, stuff like that. Let's see. I watched one of those coaching videos the other day, and he had a pretty cool filter. I want to show you that real quick, and then we'll move on. So he filtered for a riverbed bluff, and I never thought of this before, and that's the cool thing about watching those coaching videos, is that you learn how people think and how they analyze their game. So we don't have to do this for the Saw River because we're going to add the riverbed filter in here. So you could say, yeah, I saw the river, but that's fairly generic. So let's go over here to the advanced filters, and I'm going to quick filter for the riverbeds here, and down here is a riverbed. I'm going to click this green plus sign, and that's going to add it here. So, with some of these dual menu items here, you're going to have these drop downs here. So, the riverbed is true. You could also, have it be false as well. And, not all the filters have these options, but some of them do. So now we have our riverbeds true. So how do we get to where we're bluffing, that we don't have a hand? Well, we're going to go over to the hand values. And let's filter by our river hand strength. I think if someone bet the river and they just had a high card, that would be a river bluff. Some of their one pair, not a top pair, but let's do, the bottom pairs here. Second pair, sometimes I bet that for value, so I'm going to leave that out. But actually, first, let's just do the high cards here real quick. So we have a river bet is true, and then we just have high cards. So look at this. I have 107 hands. I'm losing about a little over $100 doing that. So again, these are situations where I'm bluffing. And then let's go back in here and add those pairs in there. So we'll do the bottom pairs. Excuse me. Yeah, let's just add these two. Why not? Bottom pairs. You can see I'm losing a little bit less here. But, the thing about this is that, now I know that, hey, I'm probably riverbed bluffing the river too much. So now that I know that, we have 153 hands, now we can look at all these big hands that I've lost. A 10-5 offsuit, I lost 82 big blinds. with 10-5 offsuit. You know, why was that even in the hand to begin with? You know, so again, there's literally millions and millions of possibilities for filtering your hands. Let's go ahead and apply this, actually. Let's apply this to all reports and then go over to the position report. See, so this is actually kind of interesting here. So, you know, there's not a lot of hands here, but, you know, middle position and cutoff, I'm doing okay there. Early position, well, there's only 3 hands. Can't really draw any conclusion with that. But anyways, you know, it's just another way to look at your data. Let's go ahead and clear these filters and apply it to all the reports. Okay, so I believe I hit the filters pretty good here. You know, there's a few of the coaching videos. They go over the filters quite a bit, and it's, you know, the filters, like I'm saying, you know, when you're first looking at them, it's a lot of information, but there's ways to make it easier for you with those quick filters and stuff. And, you know, again, the more you use them, the more proficient you're going to get at with them as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and move over to HUD options. HUD options, you know, obviously you're playing. When you're playing, the HUD is the most critical thing. And again, HUD options is available in all 4 of these tabs. And, you know, one of the cool things that we decided to do with HM2 is to condense all the option screens. So, you know, settings is miscellaneous settings. HUD options is all on a single screen. Same thing with hand importing and database manager. And again, those are the 4 main option screens inside of Holdem Manager 2, and they're always right at your fingertips. Okay, so this is the main option screen window. And you can see I added some of these Note Caddy badges. Let's go ahead and get rid of those. Now, we have a new line here. This is my default 2.0 HUD, and as you make changes to your HUD, this window up here is going to update, which is, you know, another feature that we pushed for as designers when HM2 first was in a concept stage. So let's go ahead and add a few stats here. Let's see. Well, let's just pick some random ones. Let's do some squeeze. So let's go ahead and add the total squeeze. I just double-clicked it. You can also click the orange arrow, and you can see it added, you know, this green stat up there. And as I add more stats, it keeps going. Now, if you want a new line in your HUD, just click the new line, and then add some more stats. And you can see it's building the HUD as we add stats. You can also import and export your HUDs to share with friends. And you can also import your 1.0 HUD. Now, let's keep going on with some of these menus and go through these real quick with you. This is the stat appearance menu, and color coding is up here. And color coding is simplified in Holdem Manager 2 because it'll tell you exactly what color is going on. And you can add some colors as well, and then you can also choose some default colors that we have set up. Now, when you're color coding stats, one thing that I always recommend is using the stoplight system. You know, red means extreme caution, yellow means they're playing average, and green means go. And that's how I use the color coding of stats. You can change the font of a individual stat. Let's say we wanted the VPIP font to be a bit bigger. Just going to go ahead and click 16. We'll say OK, and you can see the total VPIP font is now bigger. You know, again, we're on the stat appearance screen, so anything to kind of change the look of the stats is done here. And then you can also, this is where you can tell a stat to use a certain pop-up. And a pop-up is when you hover your mouse over a stat. Some stats you'll want to use decimals. 3-bet would be a good one. You know, the 3-bet, you know, is generally, you know, solid players not 3-betting any more than 7%. So, you know, if someone's 3-betting 3% or 3.9%, you know, you probably want to know that because that's a pretty big jump. The abbreviation, this is for when you add stat abbreviations. I'm gonna show you that. I'm gonna live demo that because if you're new to stats, you're probably gonna want to use these stat abbreviations. And then the min samples will just be how many samples before the stat actually starts showing up. So we hit this screen pretty good. Let's go ahead and clean up my HUD and get rid of all this new stuff that I added. Because, you know, once I add the show abbreviations, it's going to take up quite a bit more HUD space. Okay. It's actually, oh, that's fine. We can leave the HUD like that. Okay, so over on configuration properties, there's this show abbreviations checkbox. When I click that, you can see that the you know, the abbreviation started showing up here for the stats. And again, when you're new to stats, this is when you're going to want to use the show abbreviations. And then once you understand the stats, where they're at, you can turn that off. But the show abbreviations checkbox is definitely handy if you're new to poker tracking software, HUDs, stuff like that. I'm not going to go over any of these other options in here because they're, you know, they're more advanced and they're not, well, they're not needed basically. You know, when I install Holdem Manager, it basically just works. But some of these other options are things that people ask for and stuff like that. So you can explore them on your own. So let's actually show that. Well, no, we'll go back. I'm going to show you the replayer, and then we'll do a live HUD demo on the replayer. Site options. This is what HUD that you want to use for what site, and you know, you can just pick the HUD that you want, say the Versus Hero HUD, and then pick what site that you want it to display at. And that's the site options. Seating preference is kind of the same thing. You pick the site that you play at, and then you know, if you're playing 6 max and you want to sit at seat 5, you know, you just check it there. Now, Holdem Manager 2 also will, on not all poker sites, but a lot of them, especially the bigger ones, will read the configuration file of that poker site so that we know where you want to sit. But if you know, if your HUD is off, this is where you're gonna change that information so that it displays. The pop-up designer is fairly complex, a bit more complex than what this presentation can accommodate. But it will, you know, this is where you can customize your pop-ups. You can change the default ones, you can make new ones, and then the pop-ups are when you actually hover your mouse over a stat or click the stat. The chart designer, this is cool. This is brand new for HM2, and I'm going to show you this once I get to the replayer, but there's charts, HUD charts that use normalized ranges. So this is another tool for users. I like to think of it as a tool for users that are new to software. But again, I'll hit this in a second. And the main pop-up is when you actually click the player name, note caddy pop-ups, HUD filters. This is something actually I want to hit real quick. These filters will let you filter your HUD stats by date, number of players, and number of hands. So right now, I'm telling my HUD to include hands that are, 100 months old. So let's say you grinded, 3,000 hands a day. If after a few months, say like 6 months, the hands that you have on your opponents aren't really valid anymore because they played differently. You played differently. And if you have a lot of hands, you're probably going to want to change this to, say, the last 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months old. If you're a casual player, leave it alone. Don't change it. And then same thing with the use last, X number of hands. You can say use the last 10,000 hands. But this is for grinders who play a lot. Definitely not for the casual player. And then over here, for the number of players, let's say you played, say you played 6 max. The way this is set up right now is, okay, when 6 players are dealt into the hand, I want to see a HUD. I want to see HUD stats for when 2 players have been dealt into the hand, all the way up to 10 players. So again, if you play a lot and you're a grinder, you may want to change this to say 3 and 6. Same thing with the 5 here. This is all personal preference on how you want this set up. And then heads up, you can change this between 2 and 2, and then whenever 2 players are dealt into the hand, your HUD is only going to show heads up stats. You can see that if you were playing at 9 max a lot, 6 max a lot, and then all of a sudden you're playing this guy, heads up, who plays, these other limits, if you're looking at his stats, they're not going to be valid, because there's going to be hands in there when there's 5 players, 6, 7, 8, 9 players dealt into the hand. So, it's something to think about, and that's kind of how this works. If I was doing this, I'd probably set it up something like this. And then again, I'd change probably all these down here, 7 through 10 to 7 through 10. And in that way, when I see HUD stats for any number of players here, I know that I'm getting a decent range of hands in my HUD, and I'm not getting data that might not be all that accurate. Again, this is mostly for players who play a ton. If you're a tournament player, I'd be cautious about using this as well. Reason being is you could be playing a sit and go, and as this is set up right now, let's say you're heads up with someone you've never seen before. As soon as it got the heads up, you'd have no stats on them. And some stats, even though they're, when 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 players have been dealt to the hand, is definitely better than no stats. You're going to know if this guy's a tight player, stuff like that. So be cautious when you're using the HUD filters, but they are extremely powerful to use. Tournament filters. This is for a pop-up. You can actually click this down here, and it will bring how many big blinds someone has in their VPIP PFR grid. So, right now it's set to default, or it's set to the main values, but if we click this default values, it changes all these to some reasonable numbers. And again, you can totally adjust these, and let's just pick a random one. When the player has 9 or 10 big blinds in his stack, it's basically going to show VP and PFR for when that player has 9 or 10 big blinds. Okay, so that is HUD options. We're starting to run a little long on time here, so I'm going to try and speed this up. Let me look at some of these questions that are coming in. Okay. I'm going to bring up my marked hands now. Oops. Okay, so here's the replayer here, and I have an interesting, somewhat interesting hand marked here. There's a decent, or a huge EV swap from the flop to the turn, and you know, I didn't play this hand all that well, but the main thing that I do want to show you is the different HUDs, this equity, street by street equity. This is cool because, you know, here it's showing that, geez, pre-flop, you know, I was a huge dog. On the flop, I was a dog, and then on the turn, I hit gin. And then the streaming notes. We talked about the general pre-flop, flop, turn, and river notes, and these are all down here as well. So you can see as I go to the flop, you know, saying, you know, this guy's tight, and my re-raise didn't work here. So it looks like he bet, and then I ended up re-raising, and, you know, he flatted me here. And, you know, looking at his stats, he's a 16-10 player. So, yeah, bad spot for me until the turn hits. So anyways, you know, that's the note function. That's the street-by-street equity here. And then the other big thing, you can take notes here too by using the pencil icon. You can switch your HUD here. And this is on live tables as well. You're going to have this settings in this drop down here. You can change it to any HUD that you like, you know, like the versus hero HUD. This is one I set up right before the webinar here. And actually the other hand is where I want to talk about that. But you can see it, you know, I have the abbreviation, the stat abbreviations, and what you just saw there was actual the pop-up when I'm hovering over a hand. Let's actually, yeah, let's look at this other hand now. Okay, so here I have I have my versus hero, and if you look here, this guy, I've played quite a bit with this guy, and if you look at the versus hero stats, I have the exact same versus hero stats and as the real stats above. So the second line is the versus hero stats. You can see the 3-bet versus hero is 3, and it's 3.9 overall. So he doesn't 3-bet me that much, or as much as other players. The fold to 3-bet, he is 45% versus me. He folds 78%. The call 3-bet is 48% overall, but me it's 22%. So you can see that this guy knows that I play quite a bit, and he's cautious against me. And, you know, the more stats that you get on villains, the more useful these versus hero stats will be. Let's see. Let's go ahead and change the HUD to a graph. So these are the new graphs. I feel that people that are new to the tracking software should use them. And what this is doing is this line in the middle, is if anyone's in the middle, like this guy right here, this yellow line, means that he's kind of average for that stat. So for the pre-flop raise, he's average, 15%, but the VPIP, you know, is a little bit low at 18%. And, you know, that's how you can use this information. And then let's actually go over there real quick. To change how these graphs are displayed, over here in the HUD options, chart designer, you can add stats, you know, to your chart here. You can change them, you know, which ones are displayed, you know, what color they are, and then you can do horizontal bars or bars from origin. I was on horizontal bars, and that's right down the middle. That's where people, you know, should be. But if you do bars from origin, the starting point's going to be on the far left. You know, and anything far to the right, they'll be doing it more than average. And anything low on that chart, they will be doing it less than average. Let's see. Oh, one other thing. Let's see. PokerStars and iPoker has street-by-street HUDs. So this is used with live tracking, and what that does, I had a video here. I don't think I have it handy, but it'll change your HUD based on what street the action is on. And so, here I only have 4 stats on my HUD, and when I'm on the river, do I really need to know how often this guy 3-bets? No, I just want to know his river stats, how often he goes to showdown, stuff like that. How often he wins at showdown. I don't really need to know that information. It's a way to add more stats to your HUD without using a lot of real estate. Again, that's a street-by-street HUD available for PokerStars and iPoker. I believe more sites are coming soon. So let's go ahead and uncheck all the. I'm going to just show everything here, and then let's go back to the position reports. Well, let's filter for this. All right, this is a good one. I'm going to replay these hands here. Now, down here, this is showing all the hands in the replay. You can see the green ones are ones that I've won, and the red ones are hands that I've lost. It's another quick way for you to see, or quick way for you to get some information. All right, so that's the basics of the replayer there. And, we talked about some live table stuff too. Whenever you're setting up a HUD, test it in the replayer. Use the quick view option for the HUD. Look at it here. There's no reason for you to set up a HUD that you think's perfect and just start playing live. Because you're going to be worried about your HUD. So test your HUD in the replayer before you go and play live, for sure. And that's a big tip that a lot of people don't know about. All right, we have the active session and opponents tab to hit here, and we are way short on time. So I'm going to hit these super fast. The active session, this is where Table Scanner is at. Table Scanner is, I believe, is free for 6 months now. So take advantage of that if you're a cash game player. The sessions, when you're actually playing a session, the hands over here will actually scroll in as you're playing them. You can change between a graph view, and hands will kind of scroll in like this. And then one other cool thing that you can do here is you can change this to say only show hands where like 20 big blinds exchanged hands. So when I do that, I can see all these hands, and these are the critical hands. Who cares about the small pots, right? We can look at those later, but these are the critical hands, and the gray bar here is how big the actual pot was, and then the green line is your commitment, or the green or red line is your commitment to that pot. So some of these, like this one here, I basically folded early in the hand, but here, I was, I won. Here I lost a lot. That's never good, but it's a good way to quickly see the big hands from your session. And who knows, you a lot of times you're not just worried about your hands, but you might have saw something crazy happen a few hands ago that you want to review. So that's another way to get to that information quickly. Over here on the left is your session summary, some stats with your session, and then down here is Table Finder, and this will if you play on big sites, you don't need to worry about this, but if you play on some obscure skins, sometimes Holdem Manager won't know what table the HUD, or what HUD to attach to what table. That's where you would go ahead and use Table Finder. Let's see, so that is the active session tab. Let's go ahead and go over to the opponents tab. Okay, let's see. we've got a question here that I can answer real quick. Can you please show how to export a hand in form to post in the forums? Over here in the reports, I believe you can right-click. No, we're going to have to go into a hand history view. I believe we can do it here. We can export it here to my database, iPhone, Twitter. But also the copy to clipboard here, this is where all the forums are at. So all the major forums, you can set it as, say, card runners or your favorite forum. Click copy to clipboard, and that's going to copy it into that forum-friendly format. And while we're on that subject, you can also copy with stats. So when you just copy the hand history, it'll copy the basic text, but if you copy it with stats, it'll change all the players to player A, B, C, or player 1, 2, 3, 4 with some basic stats in there. Because everyone, when you are posting on forums, well, what was the guy's stats? So that's also in there as well. Let's see, we were on, that's right, going over to the Opponents tab. Opponents tab, this is, line analysis, player analysis, and there's summaries here. This was in HM1, but it got a huge revamp, and this is pretty powerful. If you're a heads-up player, it's gold. You can get to this right from the table if you right-click the note icon. Let's see if I can show you that. So if you just right-click a note icon, it'll bring up a smaller version of the big version that I'm going to demo here right now. Okay, so right now the target player is me, but when you're playing, there'll actually be a list of players over here on the left that you can quickly switch between. So I have this called 3-bet, and you can see here that, 43% of the time I'm calling 3-bet with nothing, which is not good. But you can filter for position. Up here at the top, you can filter by game type players, hand range, date range, stuff like that. Over here on the right, you can do the flop board texture, but like I said earlier, the more specific you get, the less hands you're going to get. So you're going to want to keep things kind of general, unless you do have a ton of hands on people. And then the pre-flop line, or the post-flop line for the player, this is pretty cool, because like here I have a called 3-bet. And then let's see when I've checked. Let's look at my hand strength now when I've checked on the flop. So not much has changed with that, but as you keep going, you can add check calls, check raises, and stuff like that. And then you can also view this pie chart by the flop, turn, and river. So you can see, as I get to the river, I still have nothing 30% of the time when I'm calling a 3-bet, which I know I call 3-bets too much personally, but anyways, it's another way to analyze your game, but more importantly, it's a way to analyze your opponent's game while you're actually playing. And then let's actually go over here real quick. There's a radar graph down here. Kind of interesting. It uses normalized ranges. The second line here is the average. Anything above that is out of the normalized range or higher, and anything inside of it. So my pre-flop raise is inside of it. My VPIP is outside of it. You can see my called 3-bet, which I was just talking about, is high. Is outside of it as well. And then you can also change it to let's do like a flop C-bet. You can see my flop C-bet's very low. So if you're playing against me, I'm C-betting, you better fold. Anyways, that's the radar graph down there. And then big hands. I haven't looked at this in a bit, but you can filter for the big hands that you played against that player. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is the summary section. This has all the players in your database, and down the bottom there's a bell curve. So you can see my VPIP is 22.4, and I fall right here on the bell curve. And this is, again, for VPIP. You're going to want to set these filters up, though. This is including all my Omaha and Holdem and stuff like that. So let's get rid of Omaha here. And let's do players 3 to 6 as well. See if this changes much. I don't think it will because, 100, yeah, I think changed much because, 98% of my hands are no limit 6 max. So the other thing that you can do here, you can look at like the pre-flop raise. You can look at all these different stats. The went to showdown. And if you don't have a lot of hands in your database, this bell curve is not going to be all that useful. But, you get 20, 30,000 hands in your database, this bell curve will start making some sense. And then over here are some stats of interest. We've talked about normalized ranges and stuff like that. This will show some data for that. You can click here to change what those normalized ranges are for. And then there's also some more note caddy stuff here. You can show spark graphs and stuff like that. So the other thing, let's look at this guy. Let's actually go back to the VPIP. You can see he's on the low side. Let's look at some of these guys that are losing. I'll bet you they're on the high side. Well, this guy's on the low side too. So anyways, it's another way to analyze your game and other players. And here's a tip that I used 3-4 years ago that people just love. Earlier in the demo, I showed you how to make an alias. If you're wondering how players as a group play at your stakes and your limit, find the best players in your database right here. Look how much that they've won. Look at how many hands they have, right? And then write those names down. So back down to these guys that won some money. Write all these names down and then make an alias out of them. And then you'll be able to use all the reports. You'll be able to filter, and you'll be able to see how the good players play. And it's pretty powerful if you take that to heart and you use it. So it's another way to use HM2 to help increase your win rates. So I'm basically done. Let me look at some of these other questions. Some of them are kind of complex. I may not be able to answer on this webinar, but our forum, people will definitely be there answering questions, and then also on the Poker Strategy forum. Looks like a lot of people couldn't figure out audio. Let's see. Yeah, there's some complex stat questions. I can't answer those off the top of my head. Those will take a little bit of research for me to get to it. But if you post in the forums, we'll definitely get to it. Let's see. Yeah, and all the other questions are just about audio. People saying hi. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. The turnout actually, as the webinar went on, we got a lot more people here. So one thing that I've done too is I've recorded this webinar. So I'm going to work on getting this up on YouTube. So I know a lot of you joined after we started. So you'll be able to see the first part of the webinar, and hopefully some things will make more sense. And again, thanks a lot for attending. We're going to do a couple more webinars just like this for Poker Strategy. And then we're going to go into some more detailed sections for webinars and not so much an introduction of this is how Holdem Manager works. So again, thanks for attending, and I will see you in another webinar. Thanks.